delighted to say Graham Hunter is with us. Graham, how are you?
Yeah, good chaps.
How has the Euros cavalcade been for you so far?
It's a mixture of interesting and frustrating. When you're working on one team, you don't always get to watch all the other games as closely as you would want to. That's a bit of a frustration, but being dedicated to one team is fun. Frustration mounted obviously at the beginning of the tournament because just like the players were kept separate from one another, we in the media were kept separate from Spain because of the false positive for Diego Llorente and because of the positive COVID test for Busquets, who, in all honesty, was asymptomatic, but precautions had to be taken. I'd expect him to be back with the squad in the next 24, 48 hours. And that meant a complete shutdown, really, in terms of, not in terms of Spain's work, but in the build up to the Sweden game, the access was much more limited because in my opinion, for a team coached by Luis Enrique, the access now is much more liberal. He seems in good humour. Certainly, I get on well with him, and the plans were that we would be really sort of getting our fill until the problem struck. As soon as the squad began to train fully, which was Friday evening, there was sort of a complete change again, and there are players being put up for interview. The game itself, frustration again too, because you look at the score and you look at how Portugal got themselves out of a sticky situation. You look at how Wales played in the first 60 minutes of the game against Switzerland, and Wales are now through. They were being torn apart as far as I was concerned in the first game. Now, a hard-fought draw and a win and a through. And you look at Spain and you think, yeah, this is a frustrating beat, because I genuinely thought that they played creatively and aggressively and reasonably attractively too against Sweden, and albeit that Sweden missed 2 good chances, Spain missed about 10, and now the pressure is hugely upon them again, and Lewandowski is looming, and should they go 1-0 down instead of 1-0 up, that there's going to be a maelstrom of pressure upon them. So I go back to my point, it's been a mixture of interesting and frustrating.
I was listening to your podcast and you were talking about Pedri impressing you with the statement where he went back and spoke about all his coaches and coming out after that. And also Moreno, it sounds like he's going to be a little bit of a cause célèbre if he doesn't get picked in the next game.
I agree. One of the things we were able to do, first of all, when he came on against Sweden, was check and see that, because I was pre-match, I got what's called a coach on arrival interview. So you're in the stadium in La Cartuja, and Luis Enrique will come and sort of present down the line of probably 3 broadcasters. We were third, and I said, what's the final training session really for? Is it just declaration? Do you have your team in mind? And he said, look, I really like the final training session. You don't do any tactical work. He said, you might reinforce a couple of concepts, but you just get a feel for the stadium. You try and build the energy and the adrenaline, and it's a moment when the players really start to focus on the game, etc., etc. He said that there's always a couple, I've got 9 or 10 in my team in my mind, but there's always a couple of little bumps and bangs and moans, and you work out if players are going to be ready. So from pre-match, I was thinking, I wonder who that is. Ferran Torres, for example, had a big bandage on his ankle, played through the training session, did his best the next day. Maybe he was one of them. Then Gerard Moreno doesn't start. And the obvious thing is that he has to start. So you're left wondering, was there a slight air of precaution in not bringing him on until relatively late in the game? And the roar he got when he came on, and he was useful enough once he came on. So in training the next day, you're looking at him and he's gambling around like a spring lamb, looking happy as anything. So you can only deduce that Luis Enrique thought, I like this combination of 3 up front, which is Olmo and Torres and Alvaro Morata. And it just feels a little bit unusual, because Gerard Moreno is in the form of his life. He's never scored and made more than he did this season. He's won a European trophy. And whether or not Alvaro Morata is misfiring, I am one of those who would say, look, he keeps getting himself in good chance areas, and it's frustrating that against Portugal 0-0 and Sweden he hasn't converted any of them. But I think it's coming. The two of them can play together, definitely can, and therefore, because Celebri, you said, now it would be because he's patently not injured or trying to. Sometimes they call it here sobrecarga, which I think when your muscles are a little bit overloaded, and the physios and fitness people will say, look, it's better not to give him 90 minutes now because there's a possibility of an injury occurring. I don't think even that was the case. So it was a slightly unusual decision. And at a time when they've gone 2 consecutive internationals, if you rule out the Lithuanian one where they played the entire under-21 squad because of the COVID protocols, 2 straight games without a goal and no Gerard Moreno, it can't happen again. It won't happen again. I think he starts against Poland. And for my personal taste, I'd love to see him starting with Alvaro Morata and being fed by Pedri. Because as the match went in La Cartuja and Seville against Sweden, maybe Pedri, to those who haven't watched him for Barcelona, people thought, well, that's quite good for an 18-year-old. There is more to come. I don't think he was nervous, but I do think that the pitch was a bit spongy, a bit slow. I think, and I asked him, the possession stats, the pass accuracy, really high. So the Portugal and the Sweden games, the pass accuracy is about 91% across the whole team, across the entire 90 minutes each time. And in the possession states against Sweden, it was about 83, and against Portugal, it was about 65. So shouldn't you lower those stats by taking more creative risks, accepting that occasionally you lose possession, but because the killer pass needs to be taken? And he was all for that. He said, yeah, we have to take more risks. And I think they do. That ball where you're like, I see it, we're in harmony, and we risk it, and it goes early, and that opens space up. I think that's got to be a factor in the next game against Poland. And Pedri, it just was a nice touch. Maybe listeners and viewers to Football AM think, well, it's not a big deal. And I wouldn't be making a huge deal of it. But the first thing he said when he spoke, which was his first Spain press conference, he went, the press officer said, look, Pedri wants to make a statement. And he just did. He said, look, everybody's making a fuss about me being the youngest Spain player ever at a European Championship. And I owe it all to my coaches from the first. It's galling for a man of my age to hear an 18-year-old say, when I was a kid. When I was a kid, from the first coaches I had then, through Pepe Mel, who was a coach at Las Palmas, Ronald Koeman and Luis Enrique, on behalf of me and my family, you've made me into this, so thank you. And I just, it's a little detail, but I liked it.
The point about the killer pass, right? It seems like it's not quite a culture war at the moment, but there's a style of play that France have been criticised for when they've got this luxuriously gifted team who aren't trying those killer passes. Are they not trying the killer pass because they don't need to? Are they capable of doing it when they need to? Let's wait and see. I'm going to withhold judgment. I think they probably will become a bit more risky as the tournament goes on when they need to win games. But where are we at the moment? And is there anything that we can begin to study as this tournament progresses to see what the trend is in world football at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. And one of the teams who would be the opposite of what you described, Germany, had they better strikers, if they were on form, they would have been one of the exponents of playing high, taking risks, making those killer passes. And I thought their effort was fantastic. I think they're... I hate saying this out loud about the Mannschaft, because over my lifetime, you're like, just don't even bother writing Germany off. Don't do it. Learn. But here we go. They look as if they're going to detract from that trend of teams who want to play high and entertain and play killer passes, because if Holland and Werner are two of your outlets when you're struggling, each of them are very idiosyncratic, erratic strikers, particularly at the international level, in my opinion. And I think even though it's Germany at home in Munich again, even though they made a big big charge at France, and France played counter-attack football, which did disappoint me a little bit. On another night, the offsides are, you're on that right side of the line, and maybe they win 3-0, and it looks like an historic result. Right now, Didier Deschamps, if he was entering into your debate, would be saying, well, we've got 3 points. I think I'm certainly play the weakest in the group. Next, Hungary. End of second game, if they play to form, they'll be through. They can experiment or rest in the third, blah, 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 blah. So it was odd to watch France, and it was a bit frustrating because they are capable of so much better. And it looked to me as if Benson was a bit frustrated too. And Griezmann didn't have his best game. He worked like an absolute soldier. So if you want Spain to come into that debate, we were talking about nuances, aren't we, Jared? Because nobody should be confused. They know themselves that they don't have players in midfield of the caliber of Xavi and Iniesta and Xabi Alonso, and Busquets wasn't there. And as good as Gerard Moreno is, they don't have strikers of the caliber of Fernando Torres and David Villa. So they're not the same caliber of the side that won 3 strict tournaments. But they are daring. They are. And they do accept risk. I think that they just let themselves down a little bit because that instinctive run and pass where you see the clip of people who've worked together constantly, that was absent. And I think you can look over your shoulder and say, well, that missed friendly against Lithuania on almost all the sides of this tournament, whether it's the sides that play slightly more contained, counter-attacking football are the ones that like to pass and be aggressive and be high up the pitch. They all had 2 or 3 friendlies. Spain had 1. And in my view, we probably saw just the merest hint of rust in terms of just the clinical nature of the finishing. But I think the quicker the passes flow, the quicker the runs, the more automatic the movement is for Spain. They still should, Lewandowski or not. Okay, he hasn't scored a lot of goals, but for Poland recently. I still think Spain are not only good enough to beat Poland, but then good enough to beat Slovakia and not win the tournament, but I think go forward. And for example, if you pitch them against an entertaining side, if you pitch them against England, I think you would see a really entertaining game because Luis Enrique's idea is not hold possession and use it and draw the other team and then counterpunch. He wants to play high up the pitch. He wants to press and rob and create chances and score. And he's the type of coach like Mancini, for example, who's the other exponent of what you'd love to see. If they're 2-0 up and there's 10 minutes left, you won't see Luis Enrique saying, foot off the pedal, conserve that. He'll say, we play for the third goal. So Mancini and Luis Enrique have similar ideas, Roma man, that's your man, about how the game should be played, particularly as national team coaches.
What then is the massive difference in the playing personnel they have at their disposal, in your view?
Between the two sides?
Yeah.
Between Italy and Spain? Or?
Yeah, if we pick up on Italy, just because they're trending, I guess, after last night.
I would say it helped them very much who they played. If you compare Italy's 2 rivals to Sweden, Sweden were extremely defensive. To Lustig after the match, he said, look, we didn't want to be that much of a bank defence. We didn't want to be unable to put 3 straight passes together. But when they found, they saw what the weather was like, and they were like, we'll put our umbrella up here. And they did. And I don't think that's really what Italy faced. Italy have been in slightly better form than I imagined coming in. I have a colleague, Paolo Mancucci, who said to me, look out. They are dark horses to win this tournament. They're playing beautifully. The qualification campaign was extremely good, but you look at the first 11 and you think, well, they have to be brilliant as a unit. There has to be, the expression is, some of the parts are greater or lesser than the whole. And in this instance, I think that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You look at the 11, okay, and if you reach for his first 2, as a unit, they're playing really confidently, really daringly. And I think Spain's pitch didn't help. It was burned out. the Federation handed control of the pitch after the Copa del Rey final, and Barca beat Athletic Bilbao so comfortably in a good game, 4-0. It handed control to the local Andalusian FA, and the pitch could be quicker. It's a bit spongy. I haven't been in Rome, I don't know, but the ball seemed to be fizzing. Italy are playing with a huge amount of confidence. I liked watching, for example, Insigne. Locatelli obviously was brilliant. Never mind the goals, just the movement for the second goal, where off his weaker foot he's volleying off his left foot a pass down to the right and getting the return and finishing like that. That's a goal I'll remember for whether it's goal of the tournament or not. And please don't mention Chick. That's a goal I'll treasure for a long time. And it was ultra daring. I mean, it was genuinely absolute. I think that it was at Berardi who made the 1-2. It was absolutely beautiful. So there was, for Italy at the moment, again, in my opinion, I think man for man, Spain are at least equal, maybe a little bit of ahead. But there feels like more Mancini momentum in that all the players are crystal clear about how he wants them to play. He definitely has a foot on the pedal at 2-0 up, man. It's the reason they scored each of their goal number 3 late in both the games. And listen, they're really funny to watch. I mean, I work with somebody who doesn't watch a lot of football because his focus is a camera, and he's like, rightly still, Catenaccio. It sounds odd even to say out loud. I was like, no, look out. Mancini's idea about football is completely different, certainly from when I was growing up. It couldn't be more opposed. And it's really fun to watch. And I think Spain have that in the tank. I think they have the same thing in the tank. But the pressure is on them now. They didn't get a big result first game, and therefore it's not like swaggering into the Poland game. There has to be some nerves.
Yeah.
There'll be a big decision to be made about do they start with Morata or do they go Olmo, Torres, and Gerrard? So, boys, that's what's coming on Saturday against Poland.
Well, there's plenty of jeopardy for it. I've got 2 minutes left, and I've got 2 quick questions to ask you. Well, first one is, where does Sergio Ramos play football next season?
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody knows, but I don't know. I'm being advised that I was checking at Seville last night, and it was difficult but not impossible. I struggle to see Pep Guardiola loving the current Sergio Ramos, not the player on the pitch, because he'll be back and pretty strong, but the way he behaves, like I'm the boss of everything. I think that's not necessarily a match made in heaven. You give Pep Guardiola Sergio Ramos from 2-3 years ago, he bites your hand off. My opinion is, my guess is PSG.
Okay, that would make sense. And then, how are you feeling about the game tomorrow night?
Yeah, if you're talking about Wembley,
yeah,
then nervous, obviously, like a cat would look at a river. Since 1872, there have only been 3 0-0 draws. None of them have been at Wembley. I'd bite your hand off for that now. Bite your hand off then. FA Cup final against Croatia, where we win and we get 3rd place and we qualify for the. There you are. That's all I want. Anti-football. Don't care. Give me a point. Lads, give me a point.
Is this not the time when England's coruscating arrogance,
don't know ifs and buts.
Arrogance
I've stated my case, Jar.
Gets punctured?
Give me a point.
An overhead bicycle kick by John McGinn in the 90th minute. Thanks very much.
Stop. Don't make me dream. Don't make me hope.
That's the whole point of this. Hope is a dangerous
thing. Give me a point.
I'll give you a point.
Can I be clearer? Give me a point.
Graham,
thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks a million. Take care.
Cheers, lads.